All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Shavi. I am the product manager at LinkedIn. Welcome to another episode of the Product Management Learning Series, live streaming events where industry thought leaders share their PM career journey and lessons learned along the way to inspire aspiring and current PM like you to level up your product career. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter in the event description to receive future event updates as well as recap of this event. So really awesome to see you all here. Please introduce yourself, where you're watching us from, and what you're hoping to learn today. So today with me, really honored to have Ope Bukola. Ope is the CEO of Kibo School, a new online university that provides affordable and high quality STEM degrees to African students. I think, Ope, you're one of the most exciting guests that I'm looking to talk to, because you sound like, for anyone who's working on educational product, you have like the perfect career and experience, right? You work at Google Classroom before, and then you're board members of some next generation schools in your district. You're also founding member of high impact networks of women to helping to elevate and promote racial equity. So really excited to have you here today and can't wait to learn more about your story.
Thank you for having me. Really excited for the conversation.
Cool. It looks like we have a lot of folks joining us from all over the world, and people are very excited to hear about from you as well. So, topic that transform lives. So today is all about building educational product and also product for good. So we have folks, Magdi coming from Egypt, LinkedIn user from Chicago, lots of folks from India, Donald from Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us. More folks from Nigeria, Dubai. Awesome. This is going to be a very international crowd. Thanks for spending parts of your Friday, maybe evening in some part of the world, for joining us. So, Ope, I'd like to start with maybe walking us through kind of your career journey, what got you interested in the education space, and how you started Kibo School.
For sure. Welcome, everyone, and good day to you wherever you are. Our team at Kibo is very distributed, so we don't say good morning or good afternoon because you can never know what time of day it is. But we do like to greet as we Africans do, so we tend to say good day, which sounds funny. Yeah, I think my education and my product career journey started with a love of education. So I'll date myself a little bit, but I graduated university in 2007 and I studied math and economics. And the way that I kind of supported myself and made money through university was as a math tutor for a lot of learners. And in that process, like a couple of products really just like changed my vision of what was possible. So one is when I was at university, I think right around 2006, MIT launched something called OpenCourseWare. So this is long before Coursera, Udacity, all the things we know today, but they were really the first university to put their materials online for free. And it was mostly just PDFs of MIT courses. But for me and for many of my friends, it was pretty life-changing. It was really cool that I went to school in New York, that I could sit in New York and learn from materials from these faculty members at MIT. And, I was born and raised in Nigeria, and that really turned a light bulb for me. Like, oh, if I can do this in New York, that means that my cousin in Lagos can do that, right? And it got me really interested just in technology and education. The other product that really sparked my interest was Khan Academy, which some of you may know. But when Khan Academy launched in 2008, it was really, Sal Khan with this very rudimentary setup doing math videos for his cousin, I believed. And again, and back then, tens of thousands of people. Now they've got millions of users, but just to see, I discovered it pretty early, and just to see the impact it was having and how exciting it was, really turned me on to the fact that tech could actually be a way to transform education. So I initially started out in management consulting, very quickly decided that I wanted to do tech, and specifically I wanted to do ed tech. And then I got my start in California. I worked for a company called CK12 Foundation, a technology nonprofit, building open source digital textbooks. And I think we were a bit early back then. Like a lot of schools, like barely, even in the States, barely had computers. They didn't really understand what open source was, but it was a mission that was really near and dear to my heart, right? Like, how can we take something that's quite expensive, like textbooks, and really reduce the cost and make the product better by enabling teachers to modify them, et cetera. So that's where I got my start in ed tech. I started there in more of a business role because I came from consulting. And that's when I discovered what product management was. Like, I'd never heard of PMing until I joined that organization and we were building a technology product. And I realized that I really loved interacting with our users. I loved helping the engineering team figure out, like, what should we actually be building? We didn't really have a PM for a while, and I kind of naturally stepped into that role, fell in love with product, went from there to a company called Amplify Education in New York, where we were building assessment products. Then went to Google, where I joined the Google Classroom team pretty early as a product manager. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of why I got into it and a few of the things I've been fortunate to do since.
That's very awesome. I love how you kind of follow your passion from like what you observe as really exciting product in the education space that have impacted you and people like you know, over the course of your career. And then you're also a career pivoter where you started out with a consulting and business background and then work, you know, you're passionate about the product that you're working on and gradually transition into a product capacity. I also want to welcome a couple more folks joining us from different parts of the world. We have folks from Courtney from Colorado, US. Some more folks, Adita from UK, London. More folks from India, more folks from Nigeria, Wilful from Germany. So thank you so much for joining us. So tell us a little bit more, Ope, about Kibo School. How did you come up with that idea? And as a product manager, how did you sort of go about finding the product market fit for this idea?
Yes, so Kibo is a new online university, and we are building affordable STEM degrees targeting students in Africa and in the diaspora. So we're launching with an online bachelor's degree in computer science later this year. So, how did I come up with the idea? I would say it's an idea that has been germinating for a very long time. Um, for me, it was like, why is this the right time to work on Kibo? And a few things aligned to make it the right time. One is just understanding the market trends. So the demographic trend, for those who might not know, is, Africa is like the world's youngest region. It's the fastest growing region. So literally most young people in the world will be African. About a third of all youth will be African by 2050. So there's this massive shift happening, right, where more and more young people are growing up on the continent. At the same time, the education system just really doesn't have the capacity to educate the number of people who want it. So, in Nigeria alone, over 1 million students each year are turned away from the university system. So that's already an interesting, market dynamic, and that's existed for a while, long before Kibo, but it's something I've been following. The other thing that happened, right, is something we all experienced, which is the dearth in tech talent, right? Like, we continue to see, not just in Africa, not just in the US, not just in Asia, but all over the world, very, very high demand for people who have very particular science and technology skills, right? So again, that's another market trend. And then I think that the third thing that kind of inspired Kibo was an inflection point that happened with COVID, right? With COVID, we all had to work online, or most of us had to work online. Most of us had to learn online. And even though I think a lot of the online learning that happened during the pandemic was pretty poor, right? Everybody just had to do it overnight. It wasn't well thought out. It really opened up people's minds to what else might be possible, right? Like, you are not limited to what you have geographically. So all of those things, like the demographic trend, the tech talent, the remote learning and remote work inflection made it a really good time to target this particular market with this particular product. So that's sort of what inspired the start. And then the way we validated the product market fit, just like many PMs, is you start small and build a small version. So we started last year in August offering very short online Python programming and web development courses for learners in Africa, right? Because we had to validate, do people actually want to learn online in these markets? Like, what are the particular challenges? And there are particular challenges, right? Things related to infrastructure, et cetera, that are unique to the African market. So the way we've been able to validate, and it's a continuous journey, right? We're a seed stage startup, but the way we've been able to validate is by really taking the product to market in a small way and learning from that and using that to iterate.
I love a lot of that story. I like how you are able to catch on the different trends from demographics, from work from home remotes, and all the various market signals, and then turn that into some sort of impactful product, and starting small to validate the user needs. So, in your opinion, what are some of the unique characteristics of building an educational tech product, and how would you compare that to building other type of product like a SaaS or an app, like a consumer app? Yeah, what's unique about education?
Gosh, so many things. So I'll try to keep it short. I've had the fortune of spending the last 10 plus years building in education and building for different markets in education and different types of products, but all within education. I think one thing that is really unique about the education market is the difference is that the end user is quite different from the buyer or the payer, right? So often in education, the person who is buying your product might be the administration, so a centralized school district, right? But the person who needs to use it every day is a teacher or a student in the classroom. Sometimes it'd be the person who's making the buying decision. If you have a more consumer focused education product, might be the parents, but the person who's really using it is the child. So I think that's very different from a lot of consumer products, even SaaS products that have a different buyer. Like maybe if you think about a product for work, the company might be paying. Often the buying decision is still driven by the end user. So I think as a product manager, really having to ensure that you're building for your user and not just your buyer is a problem that can be exacerbated in the education market. It's very easy to just focus on the person who's purchasing, but their experience can be very, very different, like their day-to-day reality from the user. And so that's one thing that I think is really unique, is the buyer being different from the user. The second thing that's really unique is that it can be quite high stakes. So at Amplify Education, I worked on an assessment product. So it's a testing product, right? That districts and even governments use to really determine a lot of things, right? So for teachers, it determines sometimes their pay, their tenure. It's really like, are you doing a good job, right? If you could imagine building products that students use to take their tests now, like a lot of like college entrance exams, all those things are online. So education is different because it can be quite high stakes for the people involved, right? There are a lot of things that feel, unfortunately, like it's your one shot, right? So you don't want to be the PM whose assessment product messes up for that one student who's been spending months and months getting ready to take this particular test. So I think the high stakes nature of education products makes it really different from, consumer apps, e-commerce, like things where you can try again, right? It's like, oops, there was an error, like try again, refresh your page. That's not always that's not always possible in education. And then the third thing I'll say that makes this a really unique market, or a really unique area to build, is that education is political. So a lot of things impact education products. So even at Google, we would often get a lot of people like, why is this mega corporation giving away free tools? Like, what are they trying to do to our students, right? When I worked at Amplify, we built a lot for uh, initiative called the Common Core that was in my opinion, really good, but then got mired in a bunch of political tension and then just got killed, right? And so that can happen in education because governments are involved. Like there's a lot of stakeholders involved in, it might just not be the quality of your product that determines its survival. So yeah, those are a few things that are really unique to online.
Very, very interesting. I definitely resonate with the point of having multiple, stakeholders or users in the picture. We'll double click on some of that. The political aspect was very interesting. I think, personally for me, the biggest, unique characteristics for working on LinkedIn Learning is actually the jobs to be done for a learner is super
Yeah,
complex compared to ordering an Uber or ordering
totally.
food from Instacart, which is like
Yeah.
super straightforward. You don't need to motivate people here in Spain, to learn. Learning is hard and can be fun, but it
Yeah.
is hard. It takes hard work. And I also want to welcome folks. If you have any question for Ope, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll feature them from time to time. So you talk about multiple stakeholders and users. I definitely resonate that even with like enterprise learning product, right? There's
Yeah.
the buyer from the learning and development team, and then there's your manager who might be supervising of what you're learning, but then you as a learner or employee, you're taking charge of your learning. And similarly for building educational product for schools, you have the administrator, you have the teacher, the parents, and the students. How do you build something that appeals to multiple user persona and make it interesting? How do you prioritize? Who do you listen to? And yeah, how does that shape your product roadmap?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is a perennial challenge for working in education. I think you have to focus on your primary end user, right? So for a lot of education products, I think that ends up being often students, often teachers, but there are some education products that target parents, right? So focus on the person who's going to interact with your product the most. And then it's those PM basics, right? Like really going through discovery, understanding what their life looks like and what the motivations are, right? Like, again, it's really key because, I might be a student that just has to use this thing because my teacher uses it and I really dislike it and I don't care. And so you need to understand like the context in which, it's like, I want to hang out with my friends. I don't want to use your math app. You have to understand the context in which people are using your product. Um, and then in terms of balancing the stakeholders, as somebody is saying, again, I am a strong believer in focus on the end user first and try to do right by the end user. Obviously, you can't ignore the rest of the stakeholders. Um, the other thing that you have to really understand is how the multiple stakeholders interact. So one example is, we were working on a product. We were trying to work on a feature to allow parents to have access to Google Classroom. So when Google Classroom for the first 2 years, it was mostly focused on students and teachers. And teachers are like, I want to be able to communicate with parents. Parents ask me what's happening, give parents access. But so that sounds easy enough, right? But when they say give parents access, teachers are also really protective of what's happening in their classroom. They don't necessarily want parents like reading everything, second guessing the decisions that they've made. So understanding that, yes, teachers want parents to have access, but they also don't want them to have too much access. Like you kind of have to get the nuance of how the different groups interact so that you're building features in a way that serves everyone and doesn't exacerbate potentially negative interactions between your stakeholders.
Absolutely, I can resonate with that. And I think what you were saying also resonates with our LinkedIn learners. The point about building for the end user, the political aspect, being aware of that, and obviously understanding the nuanced interaction between different stakeholders. So I wanted to talk about many people reach out. I'm sure reaching out to you to ask for like, hey, how can I work on more impactful products, building product for good? We want to think about the positive things that come out from building great product, not just monetization, right? But what are some of the practical ways that you think product managers can really sort of challenge the status quo and taking their product, into a direction that really drives real customer value, and also deliver, the business growth and retention and monetization down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, to be honest, it can be really tough, right? Because sometimes impact and growth can be at odds, right? So I don't want to pretend that if you just have great customer, if you have impact, like you're going to continue growing, right? So some of it is just understanding when that's the case and accepting it. And a good example is in education, sometimes there are like pedagogical principles or things that learning science tells us about learning that we're like, oh, this would be amazing for learning, but they're not mainstream practices yet, right? So it's like, you can build a feature that supports that, but 95% of teachers don't teach like that. So what's the point, right? You're going to invest a lot in this thing and it's just not going to get adopted. So just understanding that there are situations where, the most impactful feature sets might counter what will help your product grow. And then I think, on a related note, figure out what good means and make sure that your organization is working from a shared understanding of the impact that you want to make. So to go back to the classroom days, so how do you make a good education product, right? There's a bunch of things that could be. One way to have impact is to say, we're going to build the thing that is the most beneficial for learning, right? That's one definition of impact. We often defined impact as saving teachers time, right? And so we built a lot of features that were really designed to save the most time for the most teachers, because we felt like teacher time is a really precious thing and they can do more to impact students if we freed up their time. But those two things, right, learning directly versus teacher time, are sometimes in conflict. So I would really encourage you, as a PM that wants to drive more impact, first to get your team to have a shared understanding of, this is the type of impact metrics that matter to us, and maybe these are some other impactful things that we're not focused on right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a question from our LinkedIn community. Julian was asking for building Google Classroom. There's the teacher side and the student side. Like, are they, both of them are your end user? Do you focus on one over another? How do you measure success? And how do you, I guess, like protect like students' privacy, but also helping teachers to teach better? Do you have specific examples or
Yeah.
tips that you can talk us
Yeah,
through?
Julian, that's a really great question, and that's something that comes up a lot. We saw our end user as really both of those people, right? It's like, a classroom is a community, so teachers and students matter, and we focused more on them than, say, for example, administrators or parents, like other people who had different types of access to the product. And so it really mattered to us that both of those groups be engaged. And because of just the nature of a classroom, in a given classroom, those two things are correlated, oftentimes teacher and student engagement. Um, Overcoming restrictions with student data. So first of all, we were, and we often are in education, really governed by strict laws, right? So, like, first of all, like, you can't break the law, right? Like, you must, in America, for example, respect FERPA. And so there are a lot of things that were just like, that's the bar, and there's no going behind them. But even things that are, that might be legal, you have to be thoughtful about how you implement them. So one example is, giving teachers, and we always try to respect teachers as the leaders of their classroom and giving them data to make decisions, right? So not necessarily having like the product make decisions, but the product can say to teachers, here's what we're seeing, and then give teachers the tools to act in ways that they see is like appropriate or inappropriate. Like, one interesting example is, at one point we gave teachers the ability to mute students in a class. So muting a student means that student can't comment or post. So, that's something where you could imagine a more heavy-handed thing where, like, the product would make a decision to mute a student, but we want teachers, we want you to be able to have a conversation with the student to decide how long they'll stay muted, all of those things. So we often would give teachers the data and have them make decisions.
I think a lot of our LinkedIn learners are very curious. Like Charles asked about how do you manage multiple stakeholders, especially maybe someone like an administrator might be the ones who's paying
Yeah.
for the solution, but teachers and students are the one who's using it, and parent might have a say somewhere in between. So how do you, I guess, like managing all of this different relationship at different point in time versus and still keeping the right velocity in terms of shipping products and features and getting the right impact?
Yeah, I think something I learned from one of our program managers at Google that has been really valuable to me is the importance of collecting user feedback in a thoughtful manner, and then acting on it. So we, even though it was, it's tens of millions of users, big products, a big company, we invested a lot in actually organizing and really understanding what our users were asking for. And we did a lot of things to just let people know that we hear them. And I've taken that even to Kibo, right? It's like students give feedback on your platform or your curriculum. You can't always make the change like in the speed that they would want, but I find that users really value you saying, we have heard from you and here's what we're hearing. And um, we're taking it under consideration, or we're going to work on it, but we have these other things that we're working on first. So to the extent possible, we try to be open with our roadmap. We try to kind of give users a sense of here's what we're focusing on and why. And I think that goes a long way to just making people feel like, yep, we're being heard and not ignored.
Yep. Um, I we're coming almost on time, so I wanted to maybe shift the gear a little bit to talk about what are you seeing as the some of the biggest, most exciting opportunities in the education tech space. What makes you feel most excited about working in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I've been excited about this space for a long time, and I wake up every day still excited about it. So I feel grateful to work on it. I think the opportunities also, I think, crises build opportunities, and there are a few crises in education right now that, on one hand, keep me up at night, but on the other hand, I think are ripe for good entrepreneurship. One is a massive global teacher shortage. We have a teacher shortage in the United States. We have a shortage of qualified teachers in Nigeria and so many countries. And so I think what this means is EdTech entrepreneurs have to figure out how can we build tools to scale the impact of individual teachers, because we're just not having as many people join the profession for a bunch of reasons that vary geographically. A lot of people are leaving the profession. So I think that's an area of opportunity, is to like build tools to scale teacher impact. Um, the other thing that I'm really interested in right now, this one is just driven by the advances that we continue to make in AI, is the possibilities for conversational AI, especially to close the gap for tutoring, right? So we know that one-on-one tutoring is really powerful for learning when done well. And the content can get really good, but how might we use that to augment what teachers can do and to really support students just in time? So I'm excited just to, like, every day I see like advances in like Dolly and things like that. I'm like, we're getting closer to do some good stuff in education.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. That would be making sort of coaching and tutoring at scale, like everyone have access to. Um, I want to also ask you about how can product managers incorporate, principles of inclusivity, diversity into, building product and building product teams.
Gosh, this is a hard one, right? I think it's something that our industry really struggles with. One thing that I strongly believe is the people who are creating products should look like its users, right? And so, really thinking through, as a product leader, does my team reflect the people who use it? Even at Kibo, as we've really tried to hire young people who've gone through like the African education system, because they really understand the challenges. Um, and I think to do that, we have to rethink hiring a little bit and create more on ramps for different types of people, right? It's like if we keep doing the same things we've always done, we'll get the results we always have. And I think that especially large tech companies still recruit from a limited number of schools, still recruit in a very prescriptive way that is just not using the possible product acumen of most of humanity. And so really rethinking hiring, I think, can help go a long way towards diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely. I resonate with that. Skill based hiring versus where you go to school and your credentials. So we're coming up at time. I know 30 minutes is really, really short. Folks are already very excited about how can they follow up with your work? How can they stay in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, connect with me on LinkedIn. Mention that you attended this, and I think I'm moderately active on Twitter as well.
Awesome. We also have some lightning round of question where we ask every one of our PM
Oof.
learning series guests to get some last piece of juice and wisdom from you. So, are you ready for our
I'm like,
lightning
I
round?
don't know. All right. Okay. Yes, I'll be concise.
Awesome. So, what is your favorite product recently? What makes it like so unique for you?
Ooh, I think over the last week, I've been revisiting a product called Readwise, and I really love this product as a reader. It kind of helps you revisit things that you've read and you've learned from your reading. And I think it's easy to consume content, much harder to learn from it. So I appreciate those features.
Awesome. I need to check that out too. Who is your current product role model or have had the most influential impact on you?
Someone that I don't know personally, but I really follow her career is Deb Liu, who's the CEO of Ancestry, and she was a product leader at Facebook. And I just really appreciate a lot of her writing about being an underrepresented woman in product. She's an Asian American woman, and she's really thoughtful about like finding her voice as somebody who maybe feels more introverted. And I think especially a lot of women and women of color struggle to see ourselves as PM, and her career has just been amazing. So I hope more people follow her and read her work.
I really like Deb Liu as well. I think she has a book coming out pretty soon. So
Oh,
hopefully we
awesome.
all get
I'll
to
definitely get an early copy. She's great.
awesome. So last but not least, what is sort of one final piece of advice or resource that you like to share with a community of folks who are maybe interested in building impactful product or building education product in particular? Yeah, anything to level up people's product career while building impactful product.
Sure. I think one general piece of advice is actually to like read more fiction. I think we tend to be very focused on like blogs, articles, but I'm a big reader, and I think fundamentally building great products is about understanding people, and nothing gives you insights into people like our human stories. So take some time to read fiction. I think it makes you a better product leader. And then a very tactical product thing that I like is Lenny Rachitsky has a new podcast, and they've been doing some really strong, in-depth interviews with product leaders on that podcast. I think it's called Lenny's podcast. So you can find it.
Yeah, I enjoy Lenny's podcast as well. We already have requests on writing some of those resource down. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter and we'll have recaps of some of this resource all to you. And then I think, okay, thank you so much for spending time with us. I think your wisdom, and your tips have really resonate with our LinkedIn community. So thank you, Krista, for giving you a shout out for PM and Tech. This is so interesting and useful and inspiring. So thank you so much again for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me. It's really, I love the series, and it's awesome to get to talk about education as part of it.
Thank you. All right. And to the rest of the LinkedIn community, thanks for joining us today and looking forward to seeing you in future PM Learning series. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.